I don't know. My name is Rowan Frost. I'm the policy analyst for the Sexual Misconduct Survey and other reporting requirements for the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. My colleague Kevin Kemper is here to provide a bunch of technical support for us. Kevin is also the person to contact if you have any questions about getting signed up for notifications from HEC regarding the information we're going to be talking about today and other things. I'm going to go ahead and go through some PowerPoint slides. I've got about 12 slides, and there will be plenty of time at the end for questions. I'm not sure what kind of questions folks are going to have, so this is the first of what I think will probably be a series of info sessions as we all learn how to implement this survey. I'm going to go ahead and share screen now. Okay. And if you have questions, please feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat or save them until the last slide here. I will not be able to monitor the chat, so if anything comes up, let me know. Kevin has a few links that I will be discussing as I go through this, and he will be putting those in the chat for you. So if there's information that you need and we don't provide it for you, we'll be happy to try and get that to you as well. My goal for today, I'm just going to very briefly review the survey development, why we are doing the survey and what it contains. I'll talk about what your next steps are and kind of do a little bit of an overview of that. And as I said, we'll have plenty of time for questions. The first thing I'd like to do is review the sexual misconduct reporting webpage with you. I'm going to go ahead and just stop sharing the slides right now, and I will go to that webpage. Sorry, one moment, please. It should be easier to get the windows up here. There we go. Okay, so this is the web page for sexual misconduct reporting on the HEC website. I just wanted to kind of review a few things. If you have questions about what's actually in the legislation, those links are here. There's a little bit of information about what our responsibilities are. In addition to helping the work of the Sexual Misconduct Survey Council, we also assist with some of the reporting requirements that are in the legislation. There's information here about how to sign up. So if you want to be notified of Sexual Misconduct Survey Council meetings, if you want input on administrative rules, if you want to see what the HEC report to the legislature looked like last year, it's available there. There's information about institution responsibilities here. And then here, if you don't already have them, and Kevin will also put these links in the chat, there's a link to the survey and to the implementation guide. The base survey will not change until the Survey Council releases a new one sometime probably towards the end of 2 years. But the implementation guide will be updated fairly regularly because as we learn more about implementation challenges, we'll want to make sure that we've got information for folks available to them. And then if you're interested in meetings, the upcoming meetings, we don't have one yet, but there will be a meeting scheduled probably sometime around mid-November. And then the institution reports related to sexual misconduct, just in case you wonder what we do with all of the information that the institutions send us every year, we link them on our webpage. We don't have the ones that you all just submitted for the 24-25 year, but the 23-24 ones are here. So there's PDFs of those available. So that's what's on our webpage. So just want to make sure everyone is aware that that's a resource that's available to you. And contact information for myself and Kevin is also there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the slides. Oops, sorry. There we go. Okay. All right. Just a review real quick of the survey timeline. So the legislation gives you 2 years to administer the survey for the first time after you received it. So we sent the survey out to everyone on the 28th of August this year. So you've got until 2027 to administer the survey. There's no rush. We want you to take your time planning. I'll talk a little bit more about that. After you administer the survey, you've got 120 days to prepare a summary report that is then to be posted on your website and also sent to HEC, and we will also post it on our webpage. And then the survey is to be administered at least once every 2 years. Every 2 years is probably plenty. I can't imagine anyone would really want to do this more frequently, but there might be reasons for that. And you should always use the most recent version of the survey, which you can email me and check and make sure that you've got it, or you can check the web page because we will keep the most recent version of the survey on that web page. Just a quick overview of how the survey was developed. Reminder, in July of 2023, the legislation was passed that authorized the survey and created the council to develop the survey. The council convened in March of 2024. We had, May of 2024. In March of the fall of 25, we had the draft survey completed. We sent it out for public feedback and it wasn't a very scientific pilot, but we got about 80 people to pilot it. We got feedback from about 35 folks. More than half of those were students, which I was really pleased with because students, of course, are the ones that are taking this. We made a few tweaks, mostly on the technical side to the survey, developed the implementation guide. The council approved those for distribution in July, and they were sent out in August. So everyone should have access to the survey and the implementation guide. If you are not on my notification list, please email me and let me know that you want me to add you to it, or you can email Kevin and let him know. And then the council will continue meeting at least quarterly to get an update from me about the feedback that we're getting on the survey from the institutions. I'll continue to review information about survey best practices so that we can see if there are any changes that need to be made to keep us current with what other institutions and states are doing. And this council is required to release a base survey at least once every 2 years. We do not expect to see large changes, in part because we just don't think they're going to be necessary, but also because it's going to be that would make it very difficult for the institutions to compare across surveys. Want to be really clear, we are not encouraging anyone to look at the survey results from one institution and compare them with a different institution. You all are way too different from each other for that to be useful or valuable in any way. But institutions are probably going to want to compare results from this survey and then from the next survey to see what kinds of changes have been made. And we would encourage that. So when we develop the survey, every time you're developing a survey, you have all these questions that you want to ask. You want to make it as easy as possible for people to respond to the survey, but you also want to make sure that the data in the survey is protected. So as we were developing the survey, we're weighing the legislative mandates, which are in quotes there, for the highest practicable response rate and reasonable measures taken to ensure that enough students complete the survey, with the recognition that students are sharing incredibly sensitive data. There's a very great risk of harm to come to them if students feel that they're being forced to provide this information, or if they're somehow linked to the information that they're providing. So the legislation particularly requires a trauma-informed framework. We need to make sure that students know they don't have to answer any question that they don't want to answer, and we cannot require the disclosure of any personally identifiable information. So balancing those two things is kind of what we've done in developing the survey, and then the administrative rules, and I'll talk about those a little bit too. I'm not going to read you all of these, but this is the contents of the survey. Just generally, these are the kinds of topics that the law required the council to prepare questions about. There's quite a lot here. And I know the length of the survey is one of the concerns that a lot of folks have had. And I want to just kind of address that a little bit with this slide. The survey is divided into sections. So the demographics section is the one that's at the beginning. There's some reasons for that. There's some reasons maybe not to have it at the beginning, but we chose to put it there. Having demographics at the beginning helps students get an idea of how the survey works, get them comfortable with responding to it before we move into the questions that ask about things that might be more uncomfortable for them. All students are asked to commit the demographic or to complete the demographics questions. There are 16 of those. They are all asked about different types of sexual misconduct, and those are broken out by statute. So sexual harassment, gender-based harassment, sexual orientation harassment, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a total of 7 questions. If they've had any of those experiences, they're asked follow-up questions. So if they've had it happen to them once, there's 5 questions. If they've had it happen multiple times, there's 6. If they've had those experiences, they're then asked about, did you report? And if you didn't report, could you share with us what discouraged you from doing that? If you did report, what kinds of information and resources did you receive from the school? We ask about the impacts and the effects. How did the experiences affect you academically? How did they affect you financially? Was your health affected? We ask all students about their attitudes and beliefs and attitudes towards different types of sexual misconduct, as well as their beliefs in how well their school informs students about sexual misconduct and policies and the resources that are available to them. And then, of course, the question about providing feedback. So the fewest questions that someone would answer if they completed the survey would be 44. If they had experiences of sexual misconduct, they would be asked more. If they had all of the experiences of sexual misconduct, they could be asked to complete up to 101 questions. So that would be every one of the 7 types of sexual misconduct questions, plus multiple experiences. That would be the 101. When we piloted the survey, most people took around 20 minutes to complete it, and that range was somewhere between about 10 minutes and about 45 minutes. So it is quite a significant investment by students of time and emotional energy and cognitive energy to complete the survey, but we did try to keep it at ask as few questions as we could and still meet the mandates of the legislature. Okay, now getting into the campus survey planning cycle. The implementation guide has a bunch of different recommendations that include these. The most important thing probably is building an implementation team. I would hope that even at small schools, not just one person would be asked to implement the survey. It's a lot of work, and you're going to have better results if you can include several people on your team with different strengths. We do recommend that you include students because especially when it comes to campus messaging, students can provide really critical feedback for that. A resource audit means that you're asking students and staff and faculty, who would you go to if there was a problem? Who would you send if a student came to you and said, I have a problem? Who's the person or which is the office that you would send them to? Sometimes these would be the people you would expect, the counseling office, Title IX office, but sometimes it's going to be people that you might not necessarily have on your radar. So getting that resource audit is really important for a couple of different reasons. You're going to prepare a list of resources that you're going to that will accompany the survey so that students who are completing the survey have access to those resources immediately. You might also want to let those resources know that you're going to be doing a survey because they may be able to provide you with some information about implementing it. They may also want to prepare themselves in case they get more questions or more people coming to them once the survey is out. Other things you want to think about are who's going to be able to access the data. Here, we want as few people as possible, right? You want to keep that data as private and protected as you can. You'll need to select your online platform, which I'll talk about in a minute. Develop a data security plan, probably with your IT folks, potentially your IRB if you have one. The survey will need to be edited. You'll want to add your specific information. So there are a lot of places where the survey says, since you have started at institution in brackets, and you'll just need to replace that with, since you have started at Mount Hood Community College or whatever. And there are some optional questions that are in the implementation guide that you might want to add to the survey. Creating a survey calendar, a survey calendar is, when are we going to release the survey? For how long is it going to stay open? And then backing up from that, when do we need to start informing the campus about the survey? Who needs to approve the steps before we release the survey? So each survey calendar is going to look different on each institution. And your campus messaging is also going to look different. At a minimum, you're probably going to want to do the tell them that we're going to tell them, and then tell them that we told them. So tell them that we're going to do the survey, release the survey, and then tell them that we released the survey and ask them to remember to complete it, right? That would be absolute minimum for your messaging. How you're going to deliver that message, who those messages are going to come from is going to be institutionally specific. And some other things you might want to think about, are there institution-specific questions that you want to ask? And there's a process for that I'll review. Are you going to use incentives? Incentives can be cash, but there are a lot of different kinds of incentives that are not cash-based. And there's some recommendations for that in the implementation guide as well. Are you going to be considering using a third-party vendor? And how are you going to prepare the contract so that they meet the requirements of privacy and confidentiality? And then do you have an IRB? That's going to add to your approval process, to add time to your approval process. The survey platforms, the survey has to be offered online, that's in the law, and you'll need to be able to make accommodations for accessibility. In 2024, we sent out just a very informal request to institutions to let us know what platforms they were already using to collect student data on. And most folks who responded to us were using either SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics. So we looked at those platforms allow for collecting information from students without tracking their data. So you can set the survey on those platforms so that it doesn't collect IP addresses. They have fairly decent security. So we went ahead and developed the survey in Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey. So institutions that don't currently have Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey are going to need to obtain a platform that meets the requirements. SurveyMonkey has an educational license that last I checked was about $300. We recognize that this is a financial burden, that there's no funding available through HEC for, but we hope that by providing the survey ready to mount on your Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey account, that we can spare you some time and some expense. If you want to add campus-specific questions to the survey, there are a couple of requirements. They can't require the disclosure of identifiable information, and they have to not be objectively traumatizing. The council, there's an administrative rule that's being passed, I should say. I'll talk about that in a second. That gives a process. So basically, if you decide we want to add questions to the survey, submit them to the commission. The council will review them. If the council feels that they need to be rewritten to meet the requirements of the law, they'll come back with some suggestions for you. And there, as I said, are some pre-approved optional questions already in Appendix C of the implementation guide. Just basics on handling data. You're going to need to the harm that can happen to students if they are linked to the data they provide in the survey is pretty extreme, especially if they haven't disclosed to the school that something happened. The schools coming to them saying, we heard something bad happened to you, we want to offer help, can actually be seen as harmful by students in some circumstances. So we want to make sure that as much as possible, there's no way to link a student's identity to their data set. And one way of doing that as well is aggregating data. So we went around and around with some numbers. The minimum that we're requiring from institutions is to aggregate the demographic data for cell sizes less than 10. So if you have, for example, if you're asking about residents, do you live on campus? Do you live off campus? And or do you, are you sharing a room? Are you living on your own? If you had any responses that were less than 10, so living on my own, there's only 8 of me, 8 people who are doing that, we would ask that you would combine those responses with another response or simply report no data available. For experiences, we chose a lower number. We chose 5 instead of 10 because we wanted to be sure that no student had looked at the results from the survey and said, but wait a minute, I said that I had experienced stalking and they're saying that there's no data available on that. My experience has disappeared. As we want students' data to be protected, but we also don't want to lose information about the experiences that they had. So that's why we chose the number 5 on that. And again, there's more information in the implementation guide about this. The report format will be available to you in December 2025. I need to get that approved by the council before I send that out. But what we're basically going to ask is just for aggregated. We're not going to ask for any kind of cross analysis or anything like that, just aggregated reports. This number of students said this. The response rate is going to be, and there are different ways of calculating response rate, completion rate, and representativeness. This is how we're doing it for this survey. So the response rate is the number of enrolled students. All enrolled students are offered an opportunity to take the survey. So the percentage of the students that actually open the survey is the response rate. We want to be sure throughout the survey that students have as much autonomy when they're answering questions as possible. We want to be sure that they are consenting to disclose this information. Consent is really important. We can give them information about what the topics in the survey are going to be in advance, but they're not going to know until they've actually seen the questions how comfortable they are with sharing that information with the school. So we let them know at the beginning, hey, you're going to be asked to answer these questions. You don't have to answer any questions you're not comfortable with. And at the end of this survey, we're going to ask you again, are you okay sharing this information with your school? And if you are, you have to click the submit button. And when you click the submit button, that's going to count as a completed survey, even if there's missing data within that set. So those will be the numbers that you're going to be aggregating when you make your report are from the completed surveys. And then representativeness of the survey will be calculated by comparing the demographics of your completers with the total enrolled student body. We feel that the response rate is something that the institutions have a little bit more control over because your messaging, the way that you talk about the survey, that's something that you have a little bit of control over. The completion rate is going to be based more on what's actually in the survey, whether the students feel like they want to complete it or if they're like, oh, this is just too burdensome, I can't finish this thing. That comes back to us. So the response rate, you have a little bit more control over. The completion rate is going to give us information about what might need to be adjusted in the survey so that more students will complete it. There are administrative rules. The first set of administrative rules on the legislation 350, 335 to 346 is already in process. We noticed those rules in August. There was a hearing in September. We are hoping that the commission will be able to approve that first set of rules this week. Kevin has links to the rules that were submitted that he can put in the chat for you. There is another set of rules. It's much fewer rules, and they're mostly about handling data, keeping it private. We expect that this next set will be noticed in October. There will be a hearing in November, and we hope to have those approved in December. So again, make sure that you sign up for a notification if you aren't already getting those notices about the rules. All right, and that's for questions. I will go ahead and stop sharing screen now and open the floor to questions.
I'll just
Yeah,
start
just
one. Okay.
Colin. Yeah. Hi, and Elaine,
I'm
I see
Brenda
your hand.
Pierce. Okay.
Hi,
At
Brandon.
Central Oregon Community College, and I was going to type it, but I'll just say it. I was in reading through the guide. The statement sort of says all enrolled students, and then it says, including students who are study abroad or have enrolled at the institution within the last academic year, must be offered the opportunity. So you're looking at a couple things, right? So it's not necessarily just the term in question. You want it to go to anybody who is, this clarity, um, enrolled in that full academic year. And then for the community colleges, is this including like our adult basic skills, ELL, community ed, or is that up to us to determine that?
Um, the legislation says all enrolled students. So if you consider the student to have been enrolled, then you would want to make sure that they have access to the survey.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm not sure if that's a complete answer, but yeah.
It just, well, and like you say, there's in there that like if they are younger than 18, then they would say that, they would basically be asked not to complete it, right? Because that's one
Right. Yeah.
aspect of that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that actually just include the high school students. So that's kind of some, people we serve also. And then some of them, yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, we can kind of noodle on that, but it adds some variation in the administration.
Yeah. Yeah.
From the
Elaine?
question in chat was concerning like underage high school students.
Okay. Let me, Elena had her hand up, so I'll go ahead and call on Elena and then I'll come back to that one. Thank you.
Sure. I was just wondering, what happens to the data after it goes to HEC? Is there some sort of central report that looks at sort of the aggregate? And if so, uh, are there um, ways that we could sort of pool our data in a way that might maximize the best outputs or the best insights that can be gleaned from the data? And I'm kind of wondering what happens after we do the survey and submit the data. Where does it live? How is it used? Is there any information that's shared back with the schools?
Right. Such a good question. We are legally required to post the summaries. There's nothing in there about what HEC is supposed to do with the information afterwards. The Sexual Misconduct Survey Council will probably review that data to see if there are any changes that they can make to the survey itself, but they don't have any authority beyond that. I guess the hope would be that the institutions would take a look at their results and then work either individually or together to see, okay, where are we doing great, and this is what we're doing that's really, really good. Maybe this is something that you could do as well. And we're struggling with this area. How have you all dealt with it? So, for example, I could see the community colleges coming together because you have more similar, they're not certainly not identical, but you have more similar populations, and maybe saying, look, let's compare here. How come you've got really great numbers here and we don't? That kind of thing. But yeah, how you use the data is going to be up to you. The state right now doesn't have any method or any mandate, I should say, to analyze the data and make recommendations based on it. Okay.
Sorry, just a
Yeah, go ahead. Elena, I think you froze. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and answer Colton's question and then come back. Colton,
a follow-up question of what we should include in our
oops, sorry, still lost you there. Okay, you go ahead and type. Yeah. Colton, there is nothing in the law that says that you should exclude under 18 students. So I guess my recommendation would be send it out to all of your enrolled students, including, regardless of age. And then one of the first questions, if not the first question in the survey is, and in the introductory material too, it says, this is for people over 18. If you're under 18, please exit now. because we understand that there are reporting requirements for people under 18, and we really don't want those to be a conflict for you. But I would not recommend removing them from the distribution list because the law specifically says all enrolled students. Okay. And then Jess, I'm seeing yours, and then Tiffany, I'll come back to you. Do questions that are answered but not completed give information back to the institution? So each institution will be managing its own survey and its own responses. So there may be information available to you that you can use. As long as you are doing it internally and not publishing it, how you do your analysis is entirely up to you. And Tiffany, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you so much. I am curious because of the concern about the aggregate data less than 10 or less than 5, because we have 21 enrolled students. I work at my treatment college. We're tiny. Do we just report it? Or I mean, we don't. The large majority of the surveys are going to have less than 10 answers because there's obviously, yeah. So how do you want us to handle that?
Yeah, you will aggregate it, and you in your report you will have information about the total. We'll be asking for, what's your total enrollment, how many students responded to the survey, how many students completed it, and so that'll provide context for all of those responses where you might just say, data not reported, data not reported.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And Elena, I see your question, summary information. Yes, I'm gonna put together a template that you'll be able to use for the report. So you'll have the reporting format, and that's what I'm hoping to have the council approve in December. Yeah, Colton, yes, I would definitely, yeah, because there isn't an exemption in the legislation for students under 18. The legislation says all enrolled students. I would send it to all enrolled students. No, because you will not, Ashley, I'm sorry, I'm answering your question right now. Can we force these students out of the survey if we know they're under 18? I would not recommend that because that would require you to link the survey responses to the student's identity. So I would not recommend doing that. I think that asking students to leave the survey if they're under 18 and having a little bit of information in there about why. If they're under 18 and they complete the survey, if they say, when you ask them their age and they put the number 17 in there, you would discard that from your data survey, your data set. You would just drop those answers. Those answers would not be part of your data set. But there's no way to preemptively remove them at this point based on the legislation. Okay. The other good thing about this, the other good thing about the students receiving the information about the survey, though, is that they're going to also receive the resource list. So if they are under 18 and there's something going on for them, right, where they have had experiences like this, at least they will then know, okay, so this is something where there are resources that are available to me, and they'll have that access to that information. Sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
No, thank you. I understand we have to send it out to everybody regardless of age. In Qualtrics, though, you can, even while keeping their response anonymous, you can say if they're under 18, you can redirect them out of the survey to prevent them from providing you responses in the first place. Are you saying we should not do that? Because there will be some who will do it anyway.
Okay, I get what you're saying. In the logic skip pattern, you can send it, you could get them to exit that way. Yeah, actually that makes sense. Thank you for bringing that up. So your skip logic will be if the student is under 18, that will take them the next question. The next thing that they'll see is a thank you for responding because you are under 18. We're not going to ask you to complete the rest of the questions. Here's a link to a resource list, and they'll get that kind of a message. Thank you, Ashley. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sure. So they have to have access to the survey, but you can bounce them out on the skip logic. And thank you, Colton. Ashley brought that up. I think that answered that question too. Okay. Any other questions from folks? Okay. As I said, I'm sure that there will be questions that arise, and definitely questions that I won't be able to answer right away, and I will try to get resources for you. So please continue. Let's stay in touch. Let's keep in communication. Let me know what problems you're seeing as you start to develop your implementation plan, because the chances are other people will have seen those as well, and that way we can come up with some solutions for those challenges that arise. Will there be messaging templates? We have not developed any messaging templates. I don't expect that there will be. I think you would want to probably talk with colleagues who are in similar schools. I would encourage you to actually kind of think about how you might collaborate as institutions on developing the messaging. I can, if you contact me, if you want examples, I can probably come up with some examples for you from the published research and from the other states that have done similar surveys. If there are no further questions at this time, I'm going to go ahead and close out the session. Again, please contact us with anything that comes up. And I am always happy to talk with folks, especially students. If you have students, as you start to talk with your campus about this, if students are like, wait a minute, what's the purpose of this? I don't, I want more information. I would be more than happy to have a session just with students, if that would be helpful. All right.